Guys, so today we're going to be talking about the music of the Middle Ages. The last presentation you saw, we saw like all of the eras, and we just went and just kind of listened to a couple things of them, but we didn't spend too much time on each era. So here we go. We're going to go into the Wayback Machine. We're going to the Middle Ages. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little context here. If you guys don't know, Mr. Dean loves a little history and so forth. And a couple things about the Middle Ages that you're going to need to know about is that there's this thing called the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century. So this is 1,500 years ago. And nod your head if you've ever heard of Rome before. Yeah, you may have heard of this before. The big Roman Empire. In the Middle Ages spans 1,000 years. Literally, like the Roman Empire was holding civilization together in Europe, and when it fell apart, like no one knew what to do. And the thing that did keep things together was the church, the Christian church. And I know it's not often that we talk about the Christian church in school, but it's important for music to learn about the history of this. So here we go. So this is a picture of the Roman Empire. Okay, at its biggest, and check this out. Like the Roman Empire went all the way into Egypt and all along North Africa there. Look, it goes all the way up into London. Did you know that, Peyton? That Rome went all the way into England and stuff like that? They took over huge swaths of land all the way around Turkey and Greece. This is all considered
Italy.
Italy. This is all considered the Roman Empire. And at one point, one of the leaders of the Roman Empire just decided that everyone was Christian all of a sudden. And so this all became Christian. Like they built churches in all these different places, and you will find churches in all of these different places. So, and in just about in the 5th century, it turned in from this nice, neat map into just all this stuff. Like everybody turned into their own little part of Europe. And so we have the Eastern Roman Empire. That was centered in Constantinople, but like all these other parts look what happened in England. You know, it basically turned into all these little tiny like city-state things, and there's all these different sorts of peoples with all sorts of different governments. And the one thing that was common across all these countries was the church, basically. And the music that we have left over from this time is the earliest music that we have that's written is from the church, because literally the church taught people how to read and write. The schools were part of the church. There weren't public schools like there are nowadays, like you guys attend, but like all the schools were literally the church. Like they were attached to the church. And but the religious services back then were very musical. And because the church taught people how to write and the music happened in the church, the only music that we have that's left was, guess what, from the church. So we have 1,000 years of the Middle Ages that's mostly Christian music, and it's mostly sung, and it's sung without instruments. Okay. And for a long time, the church didn't even want to have instruments in the church. Like, no, this is only singing here. And there's some exceptions to that. Music did not, from what we have of recorded history, music did not exist for enjoyment, but was rather, to talk about church stuff. Okay. And we have something that's called chant. Chant. Peyton, have you ever heard of the word syllable before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. What's the word syllable mean? What does that mean?
The syllable it's
a part of a word, right?
Yeah, it's the part of the word that you hear the most.
Yeah, kind of, or it's also like the beat of a word, if that makes any sense. It's like the word beauty would have 2 syllables, beauty, like 2 syllables. Well, a lot of times when we sing syllabically. It's a really complicated word, but it means that like, I am singing a song. Every note is a different syllable. If you have a really long word, then you add a lot of notes to it. So if you extracalifragilistic, every single one of those syllables is a different note. And then there's another word that's called melismatic. And Peyton, I bet you've never heard that word before, huh?
Oh, no, I have not.
You have not, because this is a super nerdy music word. And melismatic means that you're not singing a lot of words, but you're singing a lot of notes. And maybe if you've ever been like church around the holidays, you may have heard the Gloria song, and it goes like this: Gloria. You ever heard that before, Peyton? That song?
No, I have.
Yeah.
I have.
Laura, have you heard that before? It looks like you have. Yeah. So that's a really popular song around the holidays, around Christmas time, and that's very melismatic. Means there's not a lot of words in there. It's only the word Gloria, but they stretch it out and they put a lot of notes on it, and that's called melismatic. And all right, get ready to get excited, kids, because we're going to check out something called plain chant. Plain yogurt, plain chant. And with plain chant, originally all of these songs were passed along from one person singing it to one person listening. So the only way to learn the song is you'd have to go to the church, or go to the celebration, and you would hear it. And oftentimes there's kind of two theories on this. One theory is that it creates a game of historical telephone where everything changes. Nod your head if you guys have ever played telephone before. Yeah. And the person at the end always ends up with the wrong answer, right? And then, but actually humans are pretty good at this. If you tell somebody like, no, like you can't change it. It has to be perfect, so you have to like listen to it and sing it perfectly. Actually, a person will do a really good job, particularly if they want to do a good job of remembering things perfectly. They'll do a pretty good job of remembering exactly what they need to remember. But it's obviously being able to write down music is really helpful. And this is what the music looked like. This picture that I'm showing you is what the music looked like back, for that 1,000 years. And we're talking about the year 500 to the year 1500, the Middle Ages. And you may notice that like the notes are square. Peyton, why do you think the notes are square?
I think the notes are square because they really didn't have that much technology, I guess.
Actually, it had to do with their technology. What do you think they wrote with back then?
Ink pen, the little felt tip stuff.
It could be felt tip. More likely it was like a feather, right?
Feather,
you see that in like movies
feather.
And stuff. They didn't have a pencil, and they didn't have these cool pens like this. I have an ink pen here, but it has an edge because, when you're writing with a feather, you can get a pretty decent edge on things. And, it's almost like you can't really make a circle, but you can make a square pretty easily, right? So I'm going to switch back over to my other camera here. And so if I take my edged pen or if I want to say, what if we want the notes to go high and then low, then back up, and we'll finish off with that, right? And if you take a look at our notation here, it looks pretty similar. And we even have diamonds. You look at it how do you do a diamond? You take your edge pen and you do a little diamond like that. And this is all like old calligraphy stuff. So if you've ever done any calligraphy, you might recognize some of these symbols and so forth. And that's how they wrote this plain chant. And I'm going to show you guys a plain chant that's about 14th century. So 14th century is actually the 1300s. This is 700 years old. We don't know the name of the composer. It is a plain chant, and it's called monophonic. Monophonic. Peyton, if you were to guess what phonic means, given that we have things called telephones, what do you think phonic means? Just throw out a guess.
Monophonic, I think, means one sound.
Yeah, it says one sound right there, but the word phonic itself means sound, and the word mono means one, right? And what it means is even though they'd have a big group of people and they'd all be singing together, they would all be singing the same thing, right? And so that means one sound. And I'm going to play you guys this. This is 700 years old. Again, we don't know the composer's name, and I have no idea if this is going to be too loud. So here we go. I'll remind you guys of a few things. We have a plain chant. Only people singing. This is sung in a church. And it's monophonic because everyone's singing the same thing. Everybody's singing the same thing. By the way, we're still on the first word. We're still on the first lyric. They're still saying Kyrie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where are they drawing out?
Well, you got to figure too. These are really big cathedrals that they would sing these. You know, the cathedral might be hundreds of feet long, and so if you sing the words really fast, the person in the back is not going to be able to hear because it's so echoey, right? But I'm going to be moving on. Hey, check this book out. Check this book out. Peyton, if you were to guess how big this book is, how big do you think it would be?
Well, that doesn't look like an 8 by 11 piece of paper.
It's not. Yeah, it's not 8.5 by 11. It's a little bigger.
Yeah. Maybe like a little bit less than a foot, like maybe 13 inches wide, and then
that's a pretty good guess. I'll give you a clue. The pages on this are about, as best I know, about 2.5 feet wide. Okay, so it's not a little tiny book. Yeah, it's not a little tiny book like this one. It's not even just like a normal notebook like this one. It's massive. I mean, we're talking about like it would be difficult for a person to carry. You probably have to get 2 or 3 people to carry one of these things around. And this is a choir book. This is a choir book because they would literally set this book up in front of the choir, the entire choir, and the entire choir would have to read off of the same book. And it seems a little silly at first, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this is before the printing press. And if they had to make a book, they would have to make it by hand. Guys, check out this book. If you look at it, it's actually inlaid with gold. Look really carefully. You're going to see that it's inlaid with gold.
Like the red parts and everything.
Yeah.
There's like gold lettering and stuff.
Some little monk, or probably even a group of monks, spent days, if not weeks or months, working on just this one page. It is incredibly detailed. There's all these little people and little gold foil things all over the places. And this would have been like, you know, one of the prized possessions for a church. And they would have had all the songs that they would have sung throughout the whole year inside of this book. And then the choir would have looked at it and it would have been like, you know, I mean, these things are priceless and they're all over Europe. And at the same time, they're pretty rare and they're hundreds of years old. These are like amazing pieces of art. And so while at the same time we're talking about plain chant, we're also talking about, you know, these really cool, you know, little time capsules.
My great grandpa has a book similar to this, but it's not as big.
Nice. Well, guys, this is just kind of our first installment of the medieval period. This is just kind of a fun sit back and listen sort of thing. We will eventually be kind of checking in on your understanding of this, but I hope you guys kind of enjoyed looking back into history. It is exactly 10 o'clock, so I'm going to stop recording.